West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Now we turn to the meaning of it all. The end of this Trump era. Let's start with the facts. President-elect Joe Biden is the winner of this election. Donald Trump is the loser of this election. Donald Trump got fewer votes than Biden, just as he got fewer votes than Clinton. Indeed, Donald Trump is now the only president to ever lose the total vote twice, both times he ran for president. And while it was not immediately visible on that unfolding election night, with results trickling in for an election where Americans shifted how they vote for this pandemic, and while, yes, it also took several days to get all those ballots in and to report out those careful projections state by state at Kornacki's big board, in the end, it was not even close. Biden beat Trump decisively with roughly 4 million more votes, with over 50% to Trump's 47, with an electoral college margin of multiple states, which shuts down even the long shot ploy that some sort of recount or lawsuit or something in a single state might drag this out. This is clear to everyone.
Former Vice President Joe Biden has been elected President of the United States,
winning the White House and denying President Trump a second term.
Rachel, the screen right underneath you says Joe Biden elected 46th president.
You can see here there's music playing, people are dancing, cheering, lots of Biden hair signs.
This is a great day for everyone, great day for America.
We've created a better opportunity and a better world for our children, and that means a lot today.
Donald Trump entered the White House as an unpopular and divisive figure, America's second choice, vaunted into power with our strange electoral college system in 2016, and he now leaves the same way, the unpopular loser of the total vote again and of the electoral college. In one of Shakespeare's most iconic monologues from the 420-year-old play As You Like It, there are those lines that apply here. All the world's a stage. All the men and women merely players, and one man in his time plays many parts. A speech that suggests the last stage is a return to the first, when a man in his old age becomes like a baby again, facing his, quote, second childishness and mere oblivion. That's Trump right now, tonight, leaving as he arrived, facing a loss that cements his presidency as an aberrant and unpopular chapter in our history as he enters his own kind of political oblivion. Okay, so what are we to make of it all? If Trump came in on a fluke, never earned majority support, not in 2 national elections, not in national approval, what was this all about? Can we just forget about him and what he wrought? Can America just say, hey, we want to say and believe we're better than this, we rejected this, let's move on? Or do we need a reckoning with how far Donald Trump got here, which shows how far we have to go? I want to tell you tonight, it matters how we approach these questions. And I want to tell you what I think. On one hand, there's no reason to overestimate Donald Trump's support when he lost, when he is the loser of this race, when he has been clearly rejected. It would be inaccurate and dilute the victory to overdo that. And sometimes some Democrats get in their own way on these things. But on the other hand, I don't think there's any good reason to think that Trumpism is some kind of ahistorical, rare anomaly in American life. In fact, over the past 4 years, we did hear people, sometimes these comfortable DC people, blithely claim this is not who we are. But America, Trumpism is who we are in some significant ways. This is who so many Americans support. And after 4 years of seeing Trump in action, removing any possible doubt people might have had, Trump went from roughly 63 million votes last time to 71 million votes this time. He grew his share of the vote among certain groups as well, including wealthy voters and Latino voters. Trump won outright among men in America. It's women of color who powered Biden's margin of victory. Trump won outright and decisively among white voters, 57% to 42%. So we need to remember that as well. Anytime you walk into a room of white people who are registered to vote, statistically, most of them back Donald Trump after all this. And finally, I want to show you this in one of the most telling breakdowns for the future. Donald Trump still broke even with Biden among the traditional electorate, the majority of Americans who had voted before. When you just look at that part, they split 49 to 50. Biden won this thing by dominating among first-time voters by 34 points. And those new voters are 13% of this electorate. So to put it a different way, Donald Trump could have won this race if those 19 million new and young voters didn't register and vote for the first time over these past few weeks. In the years ahead, I can tell you whether those new voters keep voting, it could completely control our politics more than anything else. So both things can be true. America has rejected Trump. More people voted against him than for him in 2016, and a majority voted him out in 2020. But second, Trump tapped into broad American support, and he enlarged it over this time. Consider that an informed endorsement of what he stands for. We got to face that too. It's quite obvious Trump didn't create or begin the bigotry and anger that he tapped into any more than he wrote, "Make America Great Again." That slogan was plagiarized from Ronald Reagan, just as Trump's performative politics came right out of his reality show experience. He just played this part. He got the script from around the nation. He got it from the rest of America, from our living history, from our struggle to ever try to truly achieve justice and to overcome. Which brings us back to another set of classic bars from the Bard on this topic of standing up to a would-be autocrat. I bet you know the line from Julius Caesar: "The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves." We got to look into ourselves. In a year when so many stood up to America's ongoing injustices, it is perfectly fine to forget Trump. The loser of elections are often quickly forgotten. But we should not forget Trumpism, its causes, its anger, its growing support this week as Americans face another difficult chapter. Even as many celebrate the relief of putting Trump behind them, the streets were full of this revelry and the honking and the dancing and the singing to anthems that had imagined this day. One song in particular has been playing on a loop in many parts of America, FDT, which boils down to basically forget Donald Trump, where the late artist Nipsey Hussle contrasts how Obama offered hope as Trump spends his dad's money on the vote, adding, quote, "I'm from a place where you probably can't go, speaking for a people that you probably ain't know. Pressure built up and it's probably gonna blow." And along with the rapper YG, he quotes Tupac's celebration of American diversity, quote, "It wouldn't be the USA without Mexicans, and if it's time to team up, let's begin. Black love, brown pride in the sets again. White people feel the same as my next of kin." End quote. How about that? Donald Trump exploited division for his own political survival. But it is this diverse teamwork that led to his political extinction. So just as both things can be true, we can all do two things at once. We can remember exactly how we got here, but also forget Donald Trump.
It is Monday, the 9th of November of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Oh, we finally get to catch up on some sleep, even though Donald Trump has refused to concede. He has a sycophant, an embed, a Vichy collaborator, refusing to sign the papers for the transition team to start doing their work for real. I don't want to hear anything more about extending a hand of goodwill to these people. They need to be slapped down, and they need to be slapped down hard. Also, another thing I'm kind of pissed off about is why the hell Rose Twitter is going after us after we've won, calling it such a terrible defeat. Looks like Joe is going to have north of 7 million more votes than Trump. 303 and maybe even more electoral votes. It is a blowout. And yet, Rose Twitter calls it a defeat. Well, I'm tired of you effers too. You know what? Shut up. If you want to be part of the democratic process, then how about joining the Democratic Party and stop making these criticisms without any basis in fact? Jeez. Okay, well, a lot of racism out there in America still. In fact, it looks like, well, even Ari said that we should forget Trump is going to be hard. Especially since we have Trump's shock troops out there shocking people. And Trump is talking about going on some rallies, some more super spreader rallies to spread this disinformation along with the virus. Who's going to pay for that? Is that going to be on the government dime again? I would say no. Lame duck president gets to go out on a campaign rally when he has lost, or even if he's won. How dare he? How dare these people in his administration act like they are? How dare the GOP put an effort behind this bullshit? Yes, I said it. It's early in the morning. Even though it is all BS, I gotta say, I finally got some sleep. Boy, that was the longest Tuesday I ever experienced. It was long. And you know, the G.W. Bush election went all the way into December. Or the voting, the counting, the legal efforts. So we put it way beyond Vlad cheating distance. And somehow Trump says that we have to investigate all of the votes. Well, what about your Cookbook-led effort to find the millions of illegal ballots in Maryland, for instance? Where are they? Cookbook couldn't find one illegal vote, whatever that is. All right. So Trump's going to go out and pretty much dox families whose loved ones have died and who voted before they died. And Trump's going to assert that that person voted after they were dead and that family did it for him or her. And then the maggots will go and descend upon those people and give them living hell. You know, like a terrorist. We cannot rid ourselves of this toxicity soon enough. We need to go through every level of government and find out even those who have been embedded as civil servants. The political appointees are bad enough. But those who signed the loyalty pledge to Trump and not the U.S. Constitution need to lose their jobs. We cannot have, well, look, I'll just put it this way. We have to denazify ourselves, and we have to do it as an effort, not like we did during Reconstruction. Maybe how Germany denazified might be a better model to model ourselves after. It might. Well, I can tell the gunner is snoozing away, can you? Let's get on with the rest of the show, because we have an actual curated show for you here on Monday. Well, Ari at the top was reminding us that Trump's devastating loss at the hands of a massive voter turnout, which I'll just repeat, black women. Listen to black women. They brought out the vote. John Kasich didn't, but black women did. So that means Trumpism will become even more toxic. As if it couldn't become more toxic already. Just wait. On the rest of the menu, rural doctors fear more deaths as the Dakotas experience virus sorrow. And, Utah just declared a state of emergency because their Republican anti-science governor doesn't have enough mobile morgues to put the bodies in. And the Dakotas are worse. Trump's new Supreme Court won't make abortion go away. They'll just make it much more dangerous. And states that expanded voting access for the pandemic look to keep those changes, and well, they should. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the United Arab Emirates announced a major overhaul of the country's rigid Islamic laws while expanding personal freedoms. Those tourist dollars mean a lot, I guess. And Japan's top spokesman said, with a Biden presidency, the two nations can once again exercise leadership for peace and prosperity, something sorely lacking for the last 4 years. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank Kelly for doing so. To the leftish of that chat room link that is really near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice our Patreon link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, how about sending us the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, and then we will stretch those dollars, as we have been doing for almost 10 years now of 24/7, 365 continuous resistance radio. We stretch those dollars, we pay our bills, we fly under the radar, we continue resisting, and we fulfill our civic duty. And are we still Resistance Radio? Well, until January 20th, we certainly are, and we'll see what we'll be then, because I fear we'll still have to resist the efforts of Trumpism seeping into every aspect of our lives. They are toxic, and we need to, literally rub them out, with a caustic cloth to just rub out that rust. All right? You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, thank you to those of you who have been very generous, especially in the last couple of months. That generosity is helping me go out there and get that needed machinery to replace the workhorse machinery that has been working like horses for over 4 years now, and that's when we had replaced the previous workhorses. They work like workhorses because, well, they are. Anyway, thank you for your generosity in allowing us to do so. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. Just go to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that. Having a little bit of a snafu, but we'll have everything really up and running real soon. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, do so at Justice Putnam, and you might as well, because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime, and then I get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms. You know the ones I mean. And if you would like to follow the show on Twitter, you can do that at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. I have a very sleepy dog. 4 years of this Trump has worn him out, and I've only had him for not that long. I think I've had Gunner now for a little more than a year. But he got pretty darn tired, especially since last Tuesday when they just wouldn't call the results. I don't blame him. In a way, I'm sort of glad they held off, because it does dampen down the conspiracy-minded, even though these are people who think that the Democrats are a bunch of pedophile baby eaters. So I guess convincing them that some supercomputer flipped all the votes. Remember when Trump was installed by Vlad and we couldn't even bring up Russia? And now they're talking about some supercomputer, like in Philip K. Dick's book, Valis, flipping votes. Yeah, give me a break. All right. Why don't we dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. And it is out of the AP by Stephen Groves and James McPherson. With coronavirus cases running rampant in the Dakotas and elected leaders refusing to forcefully intervene, the burden of pushing people to take the virus seriously has increasingly been put on the families of those who have died. The ranks of those who know what it means to lose someone they love to COVID-19 are on the rise. North and South Dakota have the nation's worst rate of deaths per capita over the last 30 days. Despite advances in treating COVID-19 patients, hundreds more people have died in recent weeks than during any other period. A grim exclamation point on the virus outbreak, slamming the northern plains and upper Midwest. In the Dakotas, the virus has shown few signs of slowing down. With winter approaching and hospitals scrambling to make room for COVID-19 patients, medical experts worry that virus deaths will continue to climb in a region where people have been slow to adopt mitigation measures like wearing masks. The Republican governors of both states have derided government orders to help halt the outbreaks, leaning on ideals of limited government. The deaths have increasingly hit closer to home among many tight-knit communities. A priest in the Roman Catholic Diocese of Fargo, a former school principal in DeSmet, and an elementary school employee in Sioux Falls, and also a North Dakota state legislative candidate, all dead from COVID-19. Sometimes I think it's not true, said Chris Bjorkman, who lost her husband John, age 66. Sometimes I think he's going to walk through the door, but he hasn't yet, so I just keep waiting. Bjorkman's family, who live in DeSmet, a town in eastern South Dakota where Laura Ingalls Wilder once had a homestead on the prairie, that little house on the prairie, decided to publicly share his struggle with the virus because he loves serving the community. After a career as teacher and school administrator, Bjorkman was a well-known figure, remembered for his fun-loving ways and care for children. I want people to know what COVID can do and how serious it is, Chris Bjorkman said. The family experienced the crunch facing the healthcare system as John Bjorkman was flown to a hospital in Minnesota after his condition worsened. The family posted regular Facebook updates as he was transferred to an intensive care unit in Sioux Falls and placed on a ventilator. Doctors are unsure how many more cases like Bjorkman's they can handle. Now, the way the health system works out there in rural South and North Dakota. And I should add, my family comes from right there in the border between North and South Dakota, smack dab in the middle of the east and west borders. Now, the hospital systems in the Dakotas are an intricate network of critical access facilities in rural areas and small hospitals that depend on transferring patients to a handful of large hospitals in the region. Next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy comes out of the American Independent by Lisa Needham. With Justice Amy Coney Barrett joining the Supreme Court, the court now has a solid 6-3 anti-abortion majority. Roe v. Wade will likely be seriously compromised over time, if not outright overruled. However, restricting access to abortion, a recent study shows, does not mean fewer abortions. In fact, it's quite the opposite. A recent report authored in part by researchers at the Guttmacher Institute tracked the rates of unintended pregnancies and abortions and how those relate to the legal status of abortion in various countries. Worldwide, around 60% of unintended pregnancies end in abortion, whether it's legal or not. But over the last 2 decades, the percentage of unintended pregnancies which would end in abortion increased in those countries where there were more abortion restrictions. The researchers learned that in high-income countries where abortion is broadly legal, rates of abortion are lower than in high-income countries where abortion is restricted only to save the life or the health of the mother or is banned. In the broadly legal high-income countries, 11 per 1,000 women of reproductive age have abortions. In the high-income countries where abortion is highly restricted or banned, 32 per 1,000 women of reproductive age have abortions, from 11 to 32. The United States currently falls into the broadly legal category. However, many conservative legislators have agitated for that to change. Guttmacher reported that almost half of the 58 new abortion restrictions enacted in 2019 were designed to ban some or all abortions. 10 states already have trigger laws, which would make abortion illegal or almost completely illegal automatically if the Supreme Court overturns Roe. If that happens, abortions might actually increase. In part, that increase may be because restrictions on abortion are often combined with highly restrictive views on birth control as well. Now, I'm old enough to remember back when Roe v. Wade was being legislated and then ruled on by the Supreme Court. Everybody was up in arms because what was happening is that there was restrictions on birth control. And the argument was that what the anti-abortion groups were going after was birth control because I guess they don't think people should have sex except for them. Barrett, the newest member of the court, has already said that she believes that life begins at conception and has aligned herself with groups that say allowing doctors to discuss birth control with patients is tantamount to bullying them not to reproduce. It's a worldview that comprehensively undermines reproductive health. In a post-Roe world, the need for abortions in the United States won't decrease, but the safety of them likely will. final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. River City Hash Mondays is from stateline.org, which is part of Pew. With one envelope slicer, 3 ballot scanners, and around 175 people, it took election officials roughly 37 consecutive hours to process 91,000 mail-in ballots in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. It's taking a little longer to scan than we had hoped, said Randall Wenger, chief clerk of the county's Board of Elections, speaking over the click, click, click of the envelope slicer around noon last Wednesday. But we're getting it done. As many other states wrapped up counting record numbers of mail-in ballots, the tabulating in many counties in the Keystone State continued for days after the polls closed. Unlike many other states, Pennsylvania law, as enacted by the Republican-dominated legislature, we need to remind folks, prevents local officials from beginning their count until 7 a.m. on Election Day. Some counties waited until last Wednesday to begin counting the day after the election. Many election officials hope that pandemic-related policies that made it easier to vote by mail, leading to a surge of mail-in ballots, will outlive the health crisis. And they say more state and federal money, coupled with new laws to create a more efficient and expansive mail-in voting system, would shorten future counts. The popularity in mail-in voting this election could put pressure on state lawmakers to make many COVID-19 changes permanent. Election officials, lawmakers, and voters have really changed the way they think about voting in a lot of places around the country, said Sean Morales Doyle, Deputy Director of the Democracy Program at the Brennan Center for Justice. There were a lot of voters that never had the option before this year to mail in ballots, and I think they were encouraged. It will change people's perspectives and demand on lawmakers. Of course, we know the Republicans hate democracy. They hate Americans. And most of all, they hate the fact that we vote. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You're listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Both Sides Now. Aaron Sorkin's latest film, The Trial of the Chicago 7, takes us back to Chicago in 1968 and the politically motivated prosecution, or if you will, persecution, of 7 members of a handful of different anti-Vietnam War movements and 1 Black Panther. Most of these defendants had come to peacefully protest during the Democratic National Convention, only to have Mayor Daley embroil them in an orgy of police violence. Now, Steven Spielberg's producer first pitched Sorkin way back in 2007, so that makes this film surprisingly timely. If you love Sorkin's TV work, you should know that this film feels very different. It's still set in a Sorkin world, where very intelligent people have a difficult job that reaches out to the public in some way, that both requires and values their expertise, but here Sorkin's dialogue is tighter and his pace snappier than you're used to. He even breaks up his signature walk and talk in the beginning by having each defendant cut into the previous one with an inappropriate continuation to what has just been said. The montage dramatizes our heroes' eventual defense to their conspiracy charge that the only thing these people had in common was a cause, a time, a place, and Richard Nixon's hatred. This division also speaks to Sorkin's larger point, and for this reading I take a cue from Jeet Heer's article on this film in The Nation. Effectively, Heer sees Sorkin greatly influenced by King. Yeah, not that King. Like many comfortable white moderates, Sorkin looks at protester versus repressor and bemoans the rift revealed when the ignored clash with the despotic. Can't we all just get along, he cries. We're all Americans, you know. And this movie does a fair job of making that point. Sadly, it would be more convincing if Sorkin hadn't had to fabricate one prosecutor's amenable personality, make up one sympathetic agent provocateur out of whole cloth, and bring us home with a moving and totally fictional ending. Still, the trial of the Chicago 7 is worth a watch. I mean, in a straight roll, I can't believe Sacha Baron Cohen is so good. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
I'm Scott Hirschberger, with Scientific American as an American Association for the Advancement of Science Mass Media Science and Engineering Fellow. And here's a short piece from the October 2020 issue of the magazine, in the section called Advances, Dispatches from the Frontiers of Science, Technology, and Medicine. The article is titled Quick Hits, and it's a rundown of some stories from around the globe. From Mexico, in now flooded caves, researchers discovered the oldest known ochre mines in the Americas. Around 12,000 years ago, inhabitants of the Yucatan Peninsula extracted the red pigment, possibly for use as an antiseptic and sunscreen, or for symbolic purposes such as body painting. From Italy, a massive bloom of pink algae, triggered by low snowfall and high spring and summer temperatures, could accelerate the melting of the Presena Glacier by causing the ice to absorb more sunlight. From Botswana, at least 350 elephants have dropped dead in the Okavango Panhandle since March, and live elephants have acted disoriented or seemed partially paralyzed. With poaching and anthrax ruled out as potential causes, investigators suspect an unknown disease. From Libya, a 7-million-year-old crocodile skull suggests the prehistoric animals may have traveled from Africa to the Americas. Computerized tomography of the fossil, found in Libya, revealed a slight bump in the middle of the snout, a feature of modern American crocodiles, but not their African counterparts. From Polynesia, through a genetic analysis of modern-day Polynesians and indigenous people from South America's Pacific coast, scientists concluded the two groups came into contact between AD 1150 and 1230. Where the transoceanic encounter occurred remains unknown, but the team suspects Eastern Polynesia. And from the United Arab Emirates, the successful launch of a Mars orbiter called Hope marked the first interplanetary mission conducted by an Arab nation. Carrying instruments to study the red planet's daily and seasonal weather, the spacecraft is set to enter Martian orbit in February 2021. That was Quick Hits. I'm Scott Hirschberger.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Colorectal cancer is the number 2 cancer killer of men and women in the United States, but it is preventable. Early on, colorectal cancer typically has no symptoms. It starts with a precancerous polyp or abnormal growth in the colon, which can be removed without surgery. Several tests are available to find these polyps, so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. Screening also finds colorectal cancer early when treatment works best. Recommended screening for adults at average risk begins at age 50 and continues until age 75. Learn about screening test options and find out which tests are covered by insurance. Talk to your healthcare provider about when you should be screened and discuss the best tests for you. For more information about colorectal cancer prevention, please visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
In the U.S., about 15% of people who have HIV don't know they have it. If you have it, the sooner you get diagnosed, the sooner you can start life-saving treatment. Everyone should get tested at least once, and those at high risk should get tested at least once a year. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, get tested as soon as possible. Healthcare providers, conduct routine testing according to CDC's guidelines. Screen all youth and adults for HIV risk behaviors. Help patients understand their risk and the best prevention options. If people test positive, link them to treatment and prevention counseling quickly. HIV testing is important. Know your HIV status. See your healthcare provider to get tested or find a testing site at gettested.cdc.gov. You can also get a home testing kit online or from a drugstore. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the third trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
As fall turns to winter, the flu season will be upon us in force. The best way to avoid influenza is to get immunized. Everyone 6 months and older should be vaccinated. Those at increased risk for flu complications include children under the age of 5 and adults 65 and older, people with chronic health problems such as heart disease, asthma, and diabetes, and pregnant women. To get your annual flu vaccine, see your healthcare provider or go to a pharmacy, grocery store, or clinic in your area. If you get influenza, talk with your healthcare provider right away about antiviral medication. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Voting is the core of democracy. So, are there some simple steps to take to make the United States more of a democracy? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. For starters, let's make it easier to register to vote. Allow same-day registration. Stop voter purges. End felony disenfranchisement. Make mail-in voting a norm, as it has been in 5 states prior to 2020. Allow no excuse necessary absentee ballots. Give adequate resources to the U.S. Postal Service so that ballots can be timely delivered. Make early voting a permanent feature of our elections. Increase the number of days of early voting. And increase the number of polling places so that voters who are voting in person don't have to stand in line for 6 or 8 hours in the heat or the cold. At least replace the 1,700 polling places that have been discontinued in recent years. Make sure that there are an adequate number of drop boxes. Reinstate the protections of the Voting Rights Act so that people seeking to vote are not discriminated against on the basis of race. Make sure that there is a paper trail for ballots so that we can have assurances that votes are in fact counted and that recounts when necessary can be conducted accurately and fairly. In a word, do everything possible to allow every eligible voter to vote and then count every ballot. We can do this. It's not that complicated. We just need to find the will to make our country a far better democracy. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1952. That was the day that the labor movement lost Philip Murray. Philip was born in Scotland in 1886 to an Irish Catholic family. His father was a coal miner and a union leader. Philip followed his father into the mines at just the age of 10 years old. The father and son made the trip to the Pennsylvania coal fields together when Philip was just 16. They saved enough money and then sent for the rest of their family. One day, Philip got into an altercation with one of his bosses. Not only was he fired, his entire family was kicked out of their company home. From that point on, Philip was dedicated to the union cause as the only hope for working people. He quickly rose through the ranks of the United Mine Workers, becoming vice president by the time he was 33. He worked closely with United Mine Workers president John L. Lewis. During the 1930s, there became a nationwide drive to organize industrial workers. Philip was appointed to lead the Steelworkers Organizing Committee, a key sector for the industrial effort. The Steelworker Campaign met with historic success. They reached a collective bargaining agreement with U.S. Steel, the giant of the industry. Philip went on to become the first president of the United Steelworkers of America, as well as president of the Congress of Industrial Organizations. Under his leadership, industrial labor became a powerful force. But that force was checked by the passage of the Anti-Union Taft-Hartley Act in 1947. The anti-communist hysteria of the Red Scare also took its toll on the CIO, forcing Philip to expel some of the most radical unions from the organization. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on Monday, November 9th, 2020. I'm Mark Boulanger.
Right now is a very crucial time when we need good teachers to give young people encouragement and confidence.
That is Jane Goodall, the famous anthropologist, speaking in a webinar organized by Education International. EI is the global union for teachers and other education workers. It represents more than 32 million union members in 178 countries. It has been organizing a series of webinars on issues important to educators. Ms. Goodall was asked how teachers should respond to the climate crisis.
One of the important things is trying to find ways to heal some of the harm we've inflicted and to slow down climate change because, you know, to some extent, we brought it on ourselves. Just like the pandemic, we have utterly disrespected nature and disrespected animals. And that disrespect has led to the COVID-19, a zoonotic disease. We've created environments where it's relatively easy for a pathogen like a virus, like COVID-19, to jump from an animal to a person, like the wildlife meat markets where animals from all over are sold for food, for pets, for medicine, and the bush meat markets in Africa and the international pet trade, and also our factory farms where animals are kept in unhygienic, cruel conditions. And then we will come through this pandemic, and then we're just right up against the crisis which is ongoing now, all through the pandemic, which is the climate crisis. And again, it's our disrespect of nature, this absurd feeling that we can continue to have unlimited global economic development on a planet with finite natural resources. And we're already using those up faster in some places than nature can replenish them. So what can people do? Well, there's a big move now for planting trees because trees are absorbing CO2 from the atmosphere. Protecting forests and existing trees is right now very, very important because it's going to take the trees we plant time to get big enough to do their job. but it's important to start now. And cleaning up the ocean, that's another thing. People can fight the use of single-use plastic and other things that pollute the ocean and have beach cleanups if there's a beach, but river cleanups is just as important because the river swishes everything down. And, you know, the great thing about teaching or being with or talking to the university students, the high school students, they have so many ideas as to what they can do. It's unbelievable. If children understand the problem and you empower them to take action, to talk, you listen to them, they come up with fantastic ideas themselves. And that's something, again, for teachers to set up situations where you can talk to and listen to and encourage the young people to share their ideas. Each one of us makes some impact on the planet every single day, all of us. And some of us can really make ethical choices about what we buy. Where did it come from? How was it made? Did it harm the environment? Is it cheap because of child slave labor or inequitable wages in some other country? Was it cruel to animals? We can ask those questions. People living in abject poverty simply have to do whatever they can to stay alive. And so solving poverty is tremendously important.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. You can find our features and daily newscasts on our website at radiolabor.net. Follow us on Twitter at Radio Labor. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 24 degrees Fahrenheit. Sunshine with clouds mixed today with a high around 48 to 50. Winds will be light and variable today and tonight. Cloudy tonight with lows in the mid-30s. A small chance of precipitation, though we're going to get a lot starting on Thursday for about a week. Every day of rain with not really less than a quarter inch and maybe even an inch on a few of those days. Considerable cloudiness tomorrow with a high in the low 50s. Winds will be light and variable. And confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon. And this is only part of the weekend total. We are now at 2,197, 2,197, which means that we could spike almost to 3,100. That's how many infections a day we've been getting, and it's not good. Pollen outside, I should mention that the confirmed deceased in Jackson County stands now at 8. Pollen is rated at none here in Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is good at 26 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at 2. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.29 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles, and relative humidity is at 98%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 60 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 62 and sunny. Rome is 66 and sunny. Kyiv is 46 and cloudy. Kabul is 52 and fair. Hong Kong is 69 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 53 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 60 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 45 degrees and sunny. And New York is 66 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased and these people planted. These purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Isabel Debray of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The United Arab Emirates announced on Saturday a major overhaul of the country's Islamic personal laws allowing unmarried couples to cohabitate, loosening alcohol restrictions, and criminalizing so-called honor killings. The broadening of personal freedoms reflects the changing profile of a country that has sought to bill itself as a westernized destination for tourists, fortune seekers, and businesses, despite its Islamic legal code that has previously triggered court cases against foreigners and outrage in their home countries. The reforms aim to boost the country's economic and social standing and consolidate the UAE's principles of tolerance, said state-run WAM news agency, which offered only minimal details in the surprise weekend announcement. The government decrees behind the changes were outlined extensively in the state-linked newspaper The National, which did not cite its source. The move follows a historic U.S. brokered deal to normalize relations between the UAE and Israel, which is expected to bring an influx of Israeli tourists and investment. It also comes as skyscraper-studded Dubai gets ready to host the World Expo. The high-stakes event, expected to bring a flurry of commercial activity and some 25 million visitors to the country, was set for October, but pushed back a year because of the coronavirus pandemic.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Japan's top government spokesman said today that the country wanted to communicate closely with the United States to exercise leadership of both nations for peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region. Chief Cabinet Secretary Katsunobu Kato also said that Japan would actively work on climate change issues in cooperation with the United States. Already, a Biden presidency has resulted in fantastic results, and we aren't even in transition yet because of the intransience of the Trump administration, and that must stop right now. Okay, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays, so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.